Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fiction genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Outpost. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, we're continuing where Garrett is taking off with Gwen, and she's like, okay, what's going on? And, there are Prime Order soldiers waiting, and it's interesting because at first you can tell, like, when she gets off the horse and he's clenching his fist, because there's some part of that potion is wearing off on him, but then he drinks some of it and he kind of solidifies back into, like, the Blade of the Three again. And it's so interesting that like he's yelling at her later on. He's like, okay, do me a favor, do everyone a favor, and just admit your falsehood, because it's like, oh, the fact is you and Galgazar, you lied to me, you've lied to so many people. And it's like, and his key word was set me free. And then eventually it was like, set yourself free. But it's because in his own, like, no matter how caught up in this delusion he is that, like, oh, this is the truth and Gwen's not really the true, like, queen and all that, like, the fact of the matter is there's some part of him that's still fighting it, and that's why he's like, no, like, I'm being driven mad, because basically everything he's come to know ever since he was young, because him and Gwen have known each other for a very long time. The question then becomes, like, is it like Rosamund he's known for a very long time, or was it actually the original Gwen that he had known for a long time? Regardless of the situation, like, it makes everything between them, their love and everything, a lie. And so that's a lot, because even in his delusion, it still breaks his heart. But it's like, no, it's a lie. He has to remind himself of that, and he believes it to be. But I think there's still some small part of the original Garrett still in there somewhere, pining for that. But I guess for him, more so than anything, it's like, set me free by admitting it, that everything that we've ever had was a lie, that you are a lie. But Gwen wouldn't. I mean, why would she? Because everything that Garrett knows about what he's learned from the three is the lie. Everything he knew about from before is the truth. I mean, it's just really sad, because that just means that the lie has solidified that much that on his own there isn't anything to kind of bring him back. But luckily, Talon and Tobin, interestingly enough, are on their way. Because you had the whole conversation, because Zed is not coming along, because for him it's like, well, this kind of has nothing to do with me. I've got my role to play in everything, and that's bringing my people back. Other than that, this is kind of almost human affairs. I don't know why you're even going to help Gwen, but for her, it's like, for Talon, it's like, she's my queen, but also, more so than anything, she's my friend, so of course I'm going to help her. And I love it took Janzo kind of giving Tobin something to kind of, sober him up a bit. And she's like, when he comes along, she's like, you're actually kind of different. And he's like, what? You mean? Oh, yeah, that's only because I'm not as drunk as I was before. So, but also the fact is, she's like, why are you here? I mean, she left you, I know, on your wedding day. He's like, I know, I don't need you to remind me. But it's because, and I think this is interesting, because I think for Tobin, maybe you can make the argument, maybe in the beginnings, it is a bit of a manipulation, just because what Gertie says is kind of what's resonating in his head about, oh, his legacy and stuff like that. Maybe that is the big picture. Maybe that's still at the forefront of his mind, but I think we are beginning to see a different side of Tobin. I think there's sincerity in all of this, because you can make the argument maybe he went after to save Gwen because it's like, well, can't really have much of a legacy if I don't have the queen, if I'm not there to marry the queen and whatnot. But for him, it's like, oh, they'd already gone off anyway. I mean, you could make the argument that's really why he was drinking. Was it because he was heartbroken, or was it just because everything he had dreamed about was kind of falling apart? Like I said, having a son by Gwen, and that child being the legacy that continues on upon the throne and stuff like, so I mean, being the optimist that I am, which I know, strangely enough, me being an optimistic, regardless, I think that, I think there is good in him. Like I said, he's still got shitty aspects to his personality, and he doesn't 100% do this for the right reason, but I think slowly but surely he is kind of turning over a new leaf. So I think that's kind of pretty dope. It's actually pretty badass to see him and Talon go in there and kick some ass. Talon, first and foremost, didn't even draw her sword, started kicking ass. And then Tobin comes in to join the fray, holding his own against Garrett. And then, obviously, Talon goes up against Garrett, which, that's no surprise. I mean, she whooped his ass last season, so why would this situation be any different? I guess before it was like, oh, you can make the argument that was playful training. This is him legitimate trying to kill her, but even then, he can't best her. Like, Talon's the best swordsman around, so she's swordswoman, but Jesus kicks his ass, no problem. So, And you even have Gwen on multiple occasions kind of worried that Talon is going to kill him. But it's like Talon's not going to, because I think Gwen's kind of letting it slip her mind. It's like, don't forget, Talon is, in love with Garrett. She never admitted. So she couldn't kill Garrett. She couldn't kill Garrett any more than Gwen could. Gwen should technically kill him because he is a traitor to her rule or her crown. But she would never do that because she loves Garrett. She's hoping to potentially get him back to the way he was. Your boy Tobin, standing his ground, literally got shot full of arrows, 4 arrows, still kept trudging along before he ended up collapsing from it. And I do like that, Talon had to cauterize his wounds. And I love later on when they're talking to Janzo, and Janzo's like, okay, did you have to distract him like you did me? And she's like, I know, Janzo, I didn't kiss him. He's like, I wasn't even thinking that. I was just curious. Now my thought was he actually wondering if she kissed him to distract him? Or was it because it's like, oh, maybe he was trying to compare himself, being like, oh, was he actually conscious? Because if he was unconscious, that means I'm the tougher guy because, like, you cauterized my wound and I was still conscious. I'm thinking that's what he might be also thinking, but maybe the former as well. Because I think it's also because it's like, well, let's not forget you had 1 wound, he had 4. But, so I'm sure that, like I said, Janzo just trying to make comparison. But I feel like if anyone was going to kiss him, it would be Gwen, which we know Gwen didn't kiss him to distract him because, well, we didn't. I feel like we would have seen that. So she didn't do it for the first one. So I'm assuming she didn't do it for the other 3 as well. I mean, I feel like they would have mentioned it if that was the case. It's actually kind of interesting when you kind of hear the conversation between the 3 because it was like, one of the 3, she's the one that was kind of all for this plan, and other 2 are like, we should have never listened to your plan. We should have basically sent our army after Rosman as soon as we could have, but we wasted our time on this plan, and it kind of all fell through. So basically now they're sending their full force army after her. Now it does beg the question, because part of me was wondering, like, well, there's that guy reporting everything, but I was like, how did you find out? It literally just happened, so how did you know? Oh, because it turns out there's still a traitor amongst, now amongst Gwen's soldiers and stuff like that, which I'm like, it makes sense because it's like, how else would the 3 find out immediately? Because everyone at that place with Garrett is dead. So like, how would you get word otherwise? So that's interesting. I'm curious to see what Sana has to say about this whole situation. It's like, oh, all that time and effort she put into turning Garrett into the Blade of the 3 and he got captured and whatnot. So, I mean, granted, like I said, now Garrett's aware of the other traitor, well, the other person loyal to the 3 there in the Outpost, but still, I'm curious to see. I mean, granted, like I said, the army's bearing down. I'm assuming he's one of many, but I guess it's just like Naya was able to remain undetected for so long, so, I mean, who's to say that this guy won't? Because Garrett brought up a point to be like, I literally know every knight that was here, so, like, who are you? So that should have been, that was kind of a, yeah, there's something there. So some other interesting things to kind of talk about, like, for one, it's like Garrett and Gwen and their whole conversation. She's like, you want me to admit what is it? And he's like, the fact is that everything is a lie. He's still going on and on about it, even kind of referring to her situation as like, oh, you were going to get married to Tobin, you were going to amass an army, which, yes, that's like a queen would do. But what did you do? You left your wedding behind to be with me, some commoner, selfish. It's, for him, it's like that in his mind, like, because his mind is so filled with this delusion that they filled his head with, that he's jumping at any opportunity of anything that feeds what he already believes to be true, and that's that Gwen's a false queen. The fact is that she was willing to go, follow her love, a commoner, me. It's which is interesting because it contradicts what he believes before, because for him it's like, oh, you turned me away because you found out I was alive and you turned, but doesn't that contradict what you believe? Because if she didn't care about you, why would she run off with you? If she'd already said all that stuff about, like, oh, let him die, like, why would she? But maybe in his mind he justified it as being like, oh, she didn't think I survived. Here I am before her, so now things have changed. But it's just interesting because now you're calling her selfish for it, but then you were pissed at her before because you thought she didn't care about you. So it's like, which is it? But he's not willing to see how it, like, that those things don't match up with how he's feeling and stuff like that. So he doesn't recognize the contradictions there, that he's proposing, like that. So I just think that's kind of a fascinating thing. Like I said, the delusion is so thick that that's all he can believe. So like I said, he's willing to poke hole in anything anyone else has to say. So Gwen is tasking Janzo with looking after Garrett. It's like, oh, I'm going to put a whole bunch of guards. It's like, oh, is it that dangerous? It's like, oh, it's not just for him, it's for you. It's like, of course I know you're the one that freed Naya, because who else would it be? And, it's sad, too, because Gwen's in this position, because it's like, yes, Janzo's a friend, but at the same time, it's like you had your orders, like Naya was a traitor and you let her go. To be fair, she's not going to help out the Prime Order anymore. Like, it's not like she can. So it's not like she can go to the Prime Order and be like, oh, it's like, if she does, they most likely end up killing her. Because like Janzo brought up last episode, and it's kind of been something in the back of my mind, and I've said it before, it's like, I think her family's dead. I think her mom and sister are dead. So, like, she's just kind of going to be off on her own. So I'm curious to see, if we'll ever kind of catch up with her in that regard. But it's kind of interesting because Janzo ends up telling Talon, she's like, oh my God, don't tell me you actually let her go. And he's like, yeah. And it's like, she understands why he did it. Because she's like, if you did it, you had a good reason. Because she trusts Janzo. She knows what kind of person he is and understands. If he did it, he had the right reasons, So I think, she kind of trusts in him in that regard. You know what I think is interesting? Because obviously we see that Gwen is falling more and more for Tobin. And he's obviously saying the right things and being like, hey, like, let's not talk about deals and lands and all that. Let me just enjoy this moment here with you. Now, I think this is going to be interesting because even if by some miracle Garrett does get unbrainwashed, I don't think things between him and Gwen will ever be the same. I think that, she might have some feeling for him, but it will be diluted by this moment. Because I think going forward, there's always going to be a part of her that's like, how can I trust you? Even if you're unbrainwashed, like what we have is gone, because I think, it's like, I promised to marry Tobin, plus who Tobin is now. It's like, oh, he's actually a good guy. I can find myself falling in love with him, especially now that the man I used to love is potentially gone forever. But I think even if she gets him back, it won't work. Like, I know this is going to be, I do the thing of comparing other shows, but if you're familiar with Killjoys, I think it's going to be a similar situation to the spoilers for season 1 of Killjoys, when Davin kind of lost control and he tried to kill Johnny and Dutch. It took a while before Dutch became comfortable around Davin anymore. It just made things weird and awkward between them. So I think it's going to be a similar situation because, like I said, there's always going to be a part of her that's like, I don't know if I can trust you. The things you said and you did, like, the man that I loved, I see him before me, but all I can also see is the man who tried to kill me and Talon, So I think that's, like I said, especially as she potentially falls more and more in love with Tobin and who he's become. So I think that's going to be an interesting thing, especially because Garrett's also going to have to deal with the whole, all right, I betrayed and killed my own father, which I was wondering, is like, are they going to circle back to that? Is it going to turn out that Withers is actually alive? It's like, no, he's dead. Not unless they've secretly kept him and he ends up being like another secret weapon like they did with Garrett. I have no idea. Like, it kind of, like I said, it would suck if they just straight up killed him, but maybe they did. It seemed like it, but we'll see. And that's going to be a harsh reality for him to kind of deal with. Like, oh, I almost killed Talon. Oh, I tried to kill Gwen. I said such horrible things to Gwen. Holy shit, I killed my own father. Like I said, we had our bad blood, but I didn't. I think the fact is he won't have his medicine, so slowly but surely the delusion will start waning. So that's going to help Janzo kind of break down those walls. I do like that he's like, the fact of the matter is, the fact is, you'll be tried by a true justice system, that being the 3. So help me out, bring down this false queen, but Janzo isn't listening. So no matter how complicated the situation is, he still knows that Gwen is in the right, So even under these circumstances of him being in trouble and stuff like that, he's still not going to betray her. And I was curious, what Talon was going to do with her one-on-one with Garrett. And it's like, he's like trying to pretend, oh, Talon, I'm so sorry what I did. Oh, but I know that something's wrong with me. She slams his head against the cage. He's like, oh, you filthy black blood. And she twists his arm and his fingers. And that's for Gwen. And then punches him in the gut. And it's like, that's for me. It's like, and she walks away. She's not letting her emotions get the best of her. It's like, she's probably like, you're going to regret this when you get your memories back and feel like shit, but you're not you right now, so I don't really care. I've got more important things to worry about. Now, this also leads to this whole situation, because obviously she's pissed at Zed, because it's like, Tobin got hurt. Maybe he wouldn't have if you had been there to back us up. It was only us there. But Zed is like, oh, the fact of the matter is when the time comes, you always end up choosing the humans over your own people. And for her, it's a situation of, I went to where I was most needed. It's like, what about your people? She's like, yeah, I know your situation is bad, but it's like, how did you survive that place? Oh, yeah. The fact is, I went there and I was attacked by my own people. It's like, no, those are the Black Fists. But it's like, yeah, how did your people survive? We work with the Black Fist. It's like, okay, you tell me that, you're saying that I should trust these people. Like, how can I get Gwen to trust Black Bloods when I can't even trust my own people? Because it turns out, like, obviously some of them aren't really all that good. They tried to kill me. I mean, to be fair, they saw her ears and probably just assumed she was human. So that's why they went about it. They probably wouldn't have done it if they knew she was a Black Blood. Or maybe because they saw her ears, they probably did think, oh, maybe she is a Black Blood. She just cut the tips of her ears off. Still kill her anyway. Regardless, the fact is they weren't even trying to have a conversation. But it turns out that the Black Fist and Zed's group actually work together to survive, because there's these creatures there, these giant like fireworms. Basically, they have very thick hides and skin, so nothing they did would pierce through them. So Reb and her people got the idea to basically pierce them from the inside, kill them from the inside, and it became a source of food. So for him, it's like, oh, Black Fists have done terrible things, so we all have worked together only for the necessity of survival. Other than that, I don't want them here either in this world and on this plane, because they're evil people too, But it's that thing of like, Talon has a hard time trusting Zed, but she did make a promise that she was going to help, because helping with the Black Blood situation with this key or whatever is also going to help Gwen too. So it's kind of two birds with one stone type of situation. So. And she has made a promise, and she made a point to be like, when I make a promise, I keep it, So that's why she didn't bring Vicar out, and that's why she's kind of handled things the way she has. But it's like, okay, her and Zed are going to go off and get the other piece now. She's going to keep up her side of things. So, because even Gwen was like, I don't trust him. And it's like, yeah, I don't trust him either. And it's like, don't you ever wonder why your mom never brought the Black Bloods back? And Talon's like, I did kind of start thinking that. She's like, maybe my mom was in the same position as I am. She didn't have all the information. And Gwen suggests maybe she did. That begs the question, because it does seem like, why wouldn't she? Like, they were there for a very long time. But it could be that her people might have been told the same lie. Because it turns out Zed's people, it wasn't a thing of like, oh, they went willingly. It's like, no, he lied about that, which is kind of a point. Like, how can you trust him when he's lied a little bit about some of his, like, he's like, oh, he's made such a point to be like, oh yeah, the Black Fists are so terrible and stuff like that, but didn't acknowledge the fact is that your two people have coexisted in that other world, that it's not as divided as you make it sound. And he's like, but it's like, yeah, we don't agree like morally and have the same beliefs, but it's like, still the fact is you work together and you let that little nugget of truth kind of not appear until now. So it makes Talon more reluctant to trust him. But I am curious, like, was that her choice to be like, oh yeah, like they were fed the same lies by people for so long? I mean, to be fair, it's like, it's not like they're in the best position with humans, because it's not because they were still kind of outcast as well. So it might be a thing of Talon's mom did know more than she let on. The fact is, there could be a thing of like, she knows who they really are. It's like, maybe they're just as bad as the Prime Order. If they get released, it's going to be two sides. Look, well, the Prime Order is all about enslaving and controlling people, whereas the Black Bloods are all about wiping out all humans. I mean, not all of them, but I mean, who knows? That might be the secret to all of this. So we'll see. Zed seems like he can be trusted, but the whole thing is supposed to be that, the Black Bloods are supposed to, be in the position of failing, like, basically cutting down those in power. But, that's why some stuff is kind of like, oh, are they like, it depends on how this whole situation plays out, because the prophecy could mean like, hey, they're going to change the world for the better, or the prophecy could be like, oh, the Black Blood is basically the end all be all, kind of like the apocalypse, leading to the destruction of all man and humans, so we'll have to see on that front. So also, it turns out there's still more about this whole plagueling situation. Janzel hasn't still quite cracked it yet, because it turns out the plants that he's thinking like, oh, maybe these affect it. It's like, no, they came back, one of the dudes is cured, but the other dude is covered in the plants as well, but he's not cured. So it's like, okay, so we're closing in, because it's not 100% the sun. It's not these plants. Maybe it's a combination of everything. Who knows? I'm so curious to find out. I'm also surprised that Mutt didn't try and tax that dude, but I guess like Janzo made a point to be like, stop trying to tax the people after they come back from being plaguelings. So it's kind of interesting because Janzo does have a lot on his plate. He's got to try and cure a plagueling situation. He's also got to take care of Tobin. He's also got to find a way to unbrainwash Garrett, and he's also going to have to deal with the fact is when it's all said and done, until when Gwen no longer needs him immediately like that she's going to give him a sentence for basically assisting a traitor to the crown. So that's going to be a whole thing too. So Janzo's got a lot on his plate. So. And like I said, the Prime Order is ready, getting ready to strike now. Gwen's not in the most favorable position, especially because Talon and Zed are gone right now too. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until next time, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.